Coming up on this week's show, author Geoffrey Knight is here, and he's going to talk to us about his latest books involving adventurers and billionaires.
Welcome to the Big Gay Fiction Podcast, the show for readers and writers of gay romance fiction. If you can read it, write it, watch it, or listen to it, these two guys are going to talk about it. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Adams and Will Knaus.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 149 of the Big Gay Fiction Podcast. I'm Jeff from JeffAdamsWrites.com.
And I'm Will from WillKnaus.com. This episode of the show is brought to you in part by our remarkable group of supporters on Patreon. We want to send a great big thank you to Sandy, who recently joined us. We'll have more information on how you can help join Sandy and the rest of our super cool Patreon crew in just a few moments. Well, we hope everyone listening is having a fantastic summer. I think we're kind of, would you call it the dog days? I think things are winding down for most people.
I know, it was just like 3 weeks to go till Labor Day. We are coming to the end of the summer.
Super crazy.
It's kind of insane, yeah.
Speaking of the end of the summer, we want to quickly mention that last month, July, was our most downloaded month ever.
Yes, and a lot of that was because of episode 147 that featured TJ Klune and Kirt Graves, which became our single most downloaded and watched episode ever. Former record holder on that, TJ Klune from episode 55 when he was here talking about murmuration. So we want to give a big welcome to all of you who might have found the show because of the TJ and Kirt episode. We hope you enjoy everything going forward. And to those of you who picked up the backlist, we hope you enjoy listening to all that material as well if you choose to do so.
Mm-hmm. Another quick note is we are now available on Spotify.
Ooh, yes, we have joined their podcast lineup. So if you're listening to Spotify for your music, you can check us out over there as well. And we want to give a quick reminder that the Suzanne Brockman, Jason T. Gaffney Kickstarter for their new rom-com Out of Body actually wraps up in about another week on Tuesday, August 21st. You can help them make their goal for that movie with as little pledge as just $5. We'll get you in on the action there. We'll have the link to their specific Kickstarter.com page in this week's show notes.
In the Hockey Player's Heart, the feel-good gay romance by Jeff Adams and Will Knaus, hockey star Caleb Carter returns to his hometown to recover from an injury. He never expects to run into his one-time crush at a grade school fundraiser. Seeing Aaron Price hits him hard, like being checked into the boards. The attraction is still there, even after all these years, and Caleb decides to make a play for the schoolteacher. You miss 100% of the shots you never take, right? Aaron has been burned by love before and can't imagine what a celebrity like Caleb could possibly see in a guy like him. Their differences are just too great. But as Aaron spends more time with Caleb, he begins to wonder if he might have what it takes to win the Hockey Player's Heart. Get the Hockey Player's Heart in ebook, paperback, or as an audiobook performed by me, Vince Sterling, wherever you buy books.
So before we get to a couple of books for this week, let's talk about some summertime TV that we've been watching. We have fallen hard for the NBC crafting show Making It, which stars Nick Offerman and Amy Poehler, and actually features Simon Doonan as a judge. I love this show so hard. I don't understand why it's on NBC instead of HGTV, but they've got, I think it's 8 or 10 crafters who make really cool things every week. They made forts this week, people. Forts for kids, and it was awesome. What do you think of this show? I know we just love it to pieces.
Well, okay. First of all, it's not on HGTV.
It's not on HGTV. It's on NBC.
It's not on HGTV because it's not a fucking flipping show.
I suppose that's true.
And NBC loves themselves some Amy Poehler. She's amazing. And her and Nick are so incredibly funny together, of course. This is just a super sweet, remarkably funny, feel-good show.
It's perfect for summer.
I love it so much. Makes me very, very happy. So if you haven't checked out Making It on NBC, please give it a try. I think you'll enjoy it.
Tuesdays at 10, and you can catch the episodes. There's been 2 so far. You can catch those on NBC.com and on demand. 2 documentaries that we've seen recently on Logo are also worth your attention. It's nice to see that Logo is still doing these documentaries amongst all of the just generic reruns that they've got. The first one we want to call out is one that just aired this past week called When the Beat Drops. It is a documentary about Atlanta's bucking scene, which is essentially dance line that has happened for many years from the historically black colleges and universities of the South. And these are the young men who have taken that up and have this whole scene around bucking. It's directed by Jamal Sims, who is the choreographer of some of the Step Up films, the Footloose remake. He's choreographed Madonna and Miley Cyrus tours, and this is actually his directorial debut. And it also won the documentary feature grand jury prize at this year's Outfest. I found this to be just a fascinating look at this particular piece of gay black culture, as it were, in the South. It reminded me a lot of Pose, which we also love this summer. The story of Fi-Fi, which has been around for some 20 years, doing these bucking routines in the underground clubs in Atlanta, I found quite inspirational, because these men are occasionally putting their professional lives at risk if they're seen, and that's even true even now in 2018. And some amazing choreography in action there as well. Your thoughts, sir?
I liked it a lot, and like any good dance movie, it ends with the big competition where our underdog heroes have to perform or they'll lose it all. I loved it an awful lot. I highly recommend everyone check out When the Beat Drops. Another documentary from Logo that we also recommend is called Light in the Water, and this is essentially about the history of West Hollywood Aquatics, which formed back in the 1980s. It's a group of swimmers who got together and formed a swimming club specifically to compete in the very first gay games. And after the games were over, they continued, and the community and the Aquatics Club is still running today.
Yes, I enjoyed this a lot. There was I like the origin of the gay games that kind of wrapped into this documentary, as well as looking at how the club supported each other in the height of the AIDS crisis in the 80s. And it's great to see them still going strong. I know they competed actually at the gay games that just wrapped up in Paris. So congratulations to them. You've read a book this week that you wanted to talk about. You actually went down the path of cozy mysteries.
Before I get to that, I really quickly want to mention that this week I actually started 3 different books. I did not finish them. And admittedly, I was a little bit frustrated at first, because it's like, why am I wasting my time with these books? My time is so precious. And I think probably all of you listening feel the same way. But I tried to look at it as a glass, half full kind of situation. It's like, well, now I know that those particular books just aren't for me. Mm-hmm. And that I'll use that information moving forward. But I did try something new, as Jeff mentioned. I picked up The Cozy Mystery by Mildred Abbott, Cruel Candy. This is the first book in her Cozy Corgi Mystery series. It's about Winifred, who everyone calls Fred. She moves back to her small Colorado hometown, and she's going to open a bookstore that she's going to call the Cozy Corgi, named after her adorable corgi Watson. So essentially the moment Fred and Watson hit town, a murder occurs, and we're introduced to the various wacky Dinsians and family members that inhabit said town, and the mystery is off and running. I really enjoyed this book. I think it's an excellent first entry into this series, because it not only does it tick off all the boxes for a cozy mystery, it introduces a really unique and funny cast of characters that will obviously reoccur in the coming books. So I highly recommend everyone check out Cruel Candy. If cozy mysteries are your thing, I highly recommend checking it out.
Well, maybe check it out anyway, because we didn't know cozy mysteries were your thing until you read that.
Yeah, I was kind of into it. Really quickly, we are actually going to have Mildred Abbott on the show coming up in the next couple of weeks. And Mildred is not the normal guest we would probably have on the show. So in the next few weeks, we'll explain a little bit more about why she is appearing.
Yes, absolutely. Looking forward to that.
So you were busy as well this past week.
Yes, indeed. I explored a new-to-me author, Anyta Sunday. I looked at her second book in the Signs of Love series, which is Scorpio Hates Virgo. Now, in this book, Percy Freeman returns to his aunt's home to prepare it for sale following her death. He's given some space since that happened and has finally, gotten up the will to go home and take care of this. At the same time, across the cul-de-sac, actually, Callahan Glover has also returned home, putting his graduate work aside to help his family since their father has bailed out. These two have been nemesis for years. Although it turns out that might have all been a little bit of fake posturing on both of their parts, because they've also kind of had a thing for each other, which Callahan kind of knew that Percy had a thing, but Percy wasn't really aware that Callahan had a thing. One of the things I love most about this book is this cul-de-sac neighborhood that Anyta has put in place. All of these neighbors have taken care of each other for years. They're friendly. They have block parties. They have a big 4th of July party that plays out in the book. And all these neighbors really want Percy to move back and stay in the house because he grew up with this aunt. And they kind of concoct this game of Sherlock Gnomes to get him to kind of remember what this community was like. Sherlock Gnomes they all get gnome names and they all have to do things for each other, like sneaking into their house to do like little fix-it-up projects and stuff. And over the course of the game, you're supposed to piece together who all the gnome names belong to in the cul-de-sac. So that's kind of fun too, to watch Percy kind of try to piece all that stuff together. These two, over the course, because hey, it's a romance, they drop the whole fake nemesis thing and really start to dig in with each other, how they feel about each other, not just as friends, but as possible, actual romantic partners who can build a life together. And it's something they both desperately need for different reasons. And Anyta does a great job of, she calls herself the Queen of Slow Burn, quote unquote. And this really plays itself out so well across this book. It just gave me all the warm, fuzzy feelings as they kind of connected with each other. So I highly recommend Scorpio Hates Virgo by Anyta Sunday. I suspect I'll read more of Signs of Love over time. And Anyta will actually be on the show in November when the 4th book in this series comes out. So looking forward to talking to her about that.
Cool. Now, if you want to get any of the books that we just talked about, the links for them will be in this week's show notes. We do use affiliate links, so whenever you see those links and use them, you'll be helping to support the podcast.
Yes, absolutely. We appreciate all those clicks.
Now, you can also help support the podcast with a monthly pledge through Patreon. For as little as 25 cents an episode, your pledge helps pay for the cost of producing and distributing this show. And for fans who pledge at the silver and gold levels, you'll have the exclusive opportunity to ask questions of our upcoming guests. Also, all patrons have the option to have a personalized thank you sent directly to them. I don't think we've actually mentioned in the past that the personalized thank you includes a cute little card, and we send you a fridge magnet and
stickers
and a BGFP sticker. It's pretty cool. So if you're interested in helping support the show and maybe getting a little bit of swag in the process, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/biggayfictionpodcast. That is patreon.com/biggayfictionpodcast.
Did you know that podcasts love to get reviews too? Taking a moment to leave a review about the Big Gay Fiction Podcast helps us with the show's visibility online. Please take a moment to visit iTunes and leave a review. Your comments help other readers of gay romance discover this show. Thanks for helping us spread the word about the Big Gay Fiction podcast.
So recently we had the opportunity to talk to one of our favorite authors and frankly one of our most favorite people, Geoffrey Knight. I've been in love with his Fathom's 5 books pretty much forever, it feels like, and it's great to finally have him on the show to talk not only about Fathom's 5, which has had a new book out this year, but also his billionaire romance rom-coms and some other good stuff. So let's get to that interview. We're very excited today to welcome Geoffrey Knight to the podcast. Jeff is the author of more than 25 gay fiction novels, novellas, and short stories ranging in genre from adventure, romance, suspense, and comedy. He is also the recipient of 2 Rainbow Awards, including Best Mystery Winner and Best Overall Gay Fiction Runner-Up. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Very good. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me here. This is very exciting.
And I have to dive in right to my very favorite thing. We got to talk Fathom's 5.
Excellent.
Now, we've talked it up on the podcast a few times because it is one of my favorite things. But for those who don't know what that is, tell us about what the series is.
Okay, well, I've got my little props here in front of me. So, there's the first book. So Fathom's 5 is, it's adventure. It's an adventure series, and it's about a professor who is Professor Fathom. He is the titular character. And he has gathered these. He's old and he's rich and he's wise and he's blind. Think of him, I think, like a Professor Xavier from X-Men. In fact, I always think of Patrick Stewart when I write his character. And basically, he has gathered these 5 very hot, sexy adventure seekers who are all gay, and they all have different strengths, and they have different backgrounds, different nationalities, kind of, and they're all very hot in their own way. And they go off around the globe looking for ancient buried treasures, or unraveling mysteries, dodging booby traps. It's very Indiana Jones. It's a little bit of James Bond. It's a little bit of National Treasure. It's all those good things rolled into one, I hope.
It is, very much so. And I like the National Treasure. I hadn't thought about National Treasure before, but you're very right that there's that element in there alongside Indy and James Bond.
Yes, just don't put Nick Cage in your head because he's not very sexy.
I'll go with Patrick Stewart any day.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
What inspired you to create Fathom and his team and just go that pure action-adventure route?
Oh, when I was a kid, I went and saw Raiders of the Lost Ark when I was 11, and it literally changed my life. I came out of that movie and I knew I wanted to be a storyteller. I had seen something that was so profoundly clever and thrilling and fun, and I thought, wow, I want to create that. That is so what I want to do. And when I started writing novels, I was very young. I started writing thrillers, and they were kind of straight thrillers. And then I studied film production at university, and I started writing screenplays after that. And screenplays, I wrote in different genres, but I wrote a lot of action screenplays. But again, screenplays it's a whole different beast. It's a different ball game. You're not your own boss. You've got to rely on so many other people in the film industry, and I realized it wasn't what I wanted to do. So I went back to writing novels. And then I realized, well, I really want to write adventure novels, but I want to see a gay James Bond. I want to see a gay Indiana Jones. I feel left out, that I never quite can connect with the romance or the love interest. I get it. We grow up as gay men. You grow up living in a straight world, so you get it, but you never quite get that hero that you really truly want. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to write it myself. It's that old thing, if it's not out there, do it yourself. And yes, there were a couple of gay adventure books out there when I started, but I just wanted that real hard, heavy, non-stop roller coaster ride, and I hadn't found that. So I wrote The Cross of Sins, which is the first one, and I kind of thought, you know what, if I'm only writing this for myself, then so be it. If there is nobody out there who will want to read this, then that's fine. But it turned out there were other people, which was great, and it's as soon as the first book kind of did okay, I started plotting out the whole universe for Fathom's 5, and it is a massive, intricate universe full of subplots, and I do it because I get a kick out of it. Really, I just love it, and we're up to number 5 now.
Yeah, I think that's part of why they read so well, because you could tell you have a great time writing them.
I do. I love it. I do feel like they're hard to write. Out of everything I write, they're actually really difficult. Just because that you have to write very meticulously. You have to, I kind of go back to my screenwriting days. My screenwriting days were really formative for me. And you have to be a director. You have to balance is so important in writing action to deliver that, that tension and that flow and that speed. I finished a Fathom's 5 book and I'm exhausted. I've had to think so hard, and it's such a shame because it's one of those things. It's like writing a good sex scene. It's really hard to do, but there are so many people out there in the world who go, oh, sex, God, you mustn't be able to write if that's all you do. When in fact, actually, it's really hard to do that. And action's a little bit like that. You get, there's so many people who say, oh, that's so cheesy, that's so corny, that's, such a cheeseball genre, and it's like, well, actually, it's actually really hard to write well. But you've just got to kind of stay with it, and you've got to keep the detail there, and just keep being in that place and at that time, and thinking, oh, how's he going to throw that punch, and what will it do? And it's like blocking a movie, yeah. But it's fun, but it is quite.
We're going to talk about that a little bit more too in a second, because there's some stuff from Temple of Time that I kind of want to delve into a little bit. But first, we should actually talk about Temple of Time a little bit. It's the 5th book that came out earlier this summer. Give us the whereabouts on the Fathoms team in this book.
Okay, so Temple of Time was supposed to be book 4. And what happened was everyone knows I started writing Temple of Time a long time ago. This book has been a long time coming. So apologies to everyone, sorry. But I started writing, I started writing it after I finished the 3rd book, The Curse of the Dragon God. And then I stalled badly because I was actually really spent on action, and also we started up Wild City, which we went into publishing with Ethan Day, and that was that took up a lot of time. So Temple of Time kind of went on the back burner for a bit, and then when I came back to it, I actually realized I wasn't in the spot in the timeline for the universe for that story to be told yet. I realized I needed a wedge in between Curse of the Dragon God and Temple of Time. So that's where the Tomb of Heaven came from. Tomb of Heaven was actually, this is sounding very complicated now. Tomb of Heaven was actually the story for the 2nd Scott Sapphire book, Scott Sapphire and the Emerald Orchid, which the 2nd book of that, which I haven't written yet because I stole the storyline, I used for Tomb of Heaven, and I hadn't written it at all, but I knew what I wanted to do with those characters and the villain in that story. So, but what I really wanted to do, there's a character in the 2nd Fathoms 5 book, in Riddle of the Sands, who I introduced, Daniel West, who becomes the love interest for Shane Houston. And Daniel is the British reporter, and I like his character so much, I wanted to bring him back. But I couldn't bring him back in Temple of Time with everything else that was going on in Temple of Time, because there's a lot going on. And so I needed to create a new book 4 to bring Daniel back, so that he was already slotted in there nicely for Temple of Time. So I can't remember the question
now. Tell us about what Temple of Time is.
About Temple of Time. Okay, so Temple of Time actually starts. I planted the seed for Temple of Time at the start of book 2, at the start of Riddle of the Sands, where I introduce the bad guy, Kara Sholtez, who's been collecting the pieces of a clock that is in the Mayan jungle that can kickstart a time machine, basically, and gives people the power to travel through time. Whether it's mythical or not, nobody really knows until the end of Temple of Time. But yeah, kind of hope you get that payoff. So Caro is back, and he's kidnapped some of the loved ones of a few of the Fathom's team and sent them far-flung across the globe and put them in terrible booby trap situations with the intention of dividing up Professor Fathom's team so that they won't be able to stop him from finding the Temple of Time. So I had to split up the characters in that classic, which I love, that formula. It's the Star Wars formula. Send Luke and Leia off, send Han and Chewbacca off, send the droids off, and then bring everybody back together at the end. And, you give everybody their own little adventure, and then you tie it all together. So that's what's happening in Temple of Time. I've really got to watch myself in case of spoilers. If I say a spoiler, please tell me.
Yeah, I'll try to cut you off on spoilers because nobody needs a spoiler in this book because it's that good. But I do want to you've talked about the booby traps.
Yep.
That are set up, which you essentially send the team to different clocks around the world.
Yeah.
And going back to what you talked about and how you have to, really almost cinematically think about these things, those scenes seemed ridiculously insane to write because you have to know the layout of the clock, know what you need to get done, know how the booby trap works. Oh my God, what was the research like to do these? Yep. And then you did them time and again because you had to put everybody in one.
Yeah. And did it work? That was really, you talk about how technical things can get. Did that work? Did you feel like you knew how the clock looked and functioned?
It worked ridiculously well for me. I'm like, oh my God, that's very cool. Is that real? I don't think that could be real. But you had me sold. I mean, I was Googling to see if some of these things were real.
Oh, do it. So it was a real concern. I knew that would actually be the hardest part of the book to write was that getting across what these clocks looked like and how they functioned and not confusing the hell. That's the last thing you ever want to do in an adventure, an action sequence is confuse people. Everything has to be so clear. And so that was a real concern whether I actually pulled that off or not. There's the water clock in Morocco. There's the windmill clock in the Netherlands. And then there's the sky clock on the Matterhorn in Swiss Alps. The hardest one to write was the water clock, which is actually the only real one. It's actually not. There's not a real clock. That clock itself isn't real, but there are water clocks. Water clocks were just to explain what a water clock is. When humankind realized, I think I do this speech in the book, when humankind realized that sundials weren't necessarily effective because of clouds, you have a rainy day, suddenly your clock doesn't work. They invented lots of different cultures invented water clocks. China invented them, the North Africans, the early Europeans. And it's a really simple, just a measure of time. If water pours at a consistent rate, it can pour into one vessel, then another, and if everything is equal, it will give you an equal measure of time. And so it does actually make a lot of sense as a basic clock. I then had to turn it into a death trap. We just thought, oh my God, this is going to be a great fun death trap. I mean, you've got water, you've got all these intricate old things moving and turning, and it was just a matter of, okay, can I pull this off? But hopefully I did. As for the other two, the windmill clock does not exist. I was just fascinated by the idea of all the cogs and turning pieces of a clock and the turning pieces of a windmill. Plus, you've got the sails of a windmill. I thought, that's going to be a fun visual, so I want to create that. And then the other one, the one in the Swiss Alps, the sky clock, was originally supposed to be in Prague. I was going to set the scene in there's a celestial clock in Prague, which is in a tower there, and it's a very famous clock. And I was going to set it there, but I thought, I can't. I need it to be more fictional. You can't have a big, exciting scene in Prague when I've got all these other things happening. And so I thought, no, I'm going to create a fictional town in the Swiss Alps and put that clock in there, and then that gave me the opportunity to use snow to great effect, hopefully without any spoilers. Yeah, so that's where the clocks came from. So the only one that's a real clock is the water clock.
Amazing. Yeah, I think you took this book over the top of the other ones because there were so many set pieces like the clocks and at the temple and all that stuff. It's like totally blew my mind. Yeah.
I think I had to because I took so long to write it. I think I really had to deliver because I'd held off and I'd made people wait so long that I would be punished if I didn't try to lift my game.
Yeah, more than once I poked you on Facebook going, Fathom's book. So what's next for the Fathoms team? Because you've hinted at some other stuff coming in the relatively near future.
Yeah, okay. So I did hint at a Christmas story a little while ago on Facebook. You know how I said I would do that? I actually meant I wouldn't.
Oh.
That's what I thought then. So I actually do like that story, and I'm actually going to push back to book 7. So book 6 is if you're familiar with the characters in Fathoms 5, something very mysterious is happening to Eden. He's very grumpy and he's losing the plot, and he's very sick. So the next book is called The Tears of the Golden Tiger, and it's the resolution of that story, which there's a couple of little clues in Tomb of Heaven as to where that's going, that I plant in the awesome shark scene in Tomb of Heaven. So that's where the next book is going, but I am planning a spin-off, which without giving anything away, please tell me, just shut me off if I do. There's a new spin-off called Time Stormers, which is a time travel series. Ooh. And the first book is called The Empire of Evil.
Well, hurry up and write that, please.
Hey, I will. I'll try. And you won't have to wait as long as you did for Temple of Time, I promise.
Good.
So you've got a lot of different, not only just the action adventure, but you've written in a lot of different subgenres in gay fiction. Was the first Fathoms 5 book the first piece of gay fiction that you published?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Cross of Sins. Yes, I'd written about 3 straight thrillers up until then, and that's when I thought I'm gay. Can I write something gay? So I wrote Cross of Sins, and there's been no looking back. I haven't written anything straight since. Have I? No, I've written one straight book, but it has a gay tint to it. But everything else is like, you know what? I want to write about gay heroes. I want to write gay stories, whether they're drama or thrillers or comedies, whatever. Yes, I haven't looked back.
Well, speaking about drama, and you've got I believe it's a gay romance coming up this September, The Billionaire's Wedding. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Sounds good.
Let me just grab my props. So that is the sequel to The Billionaire's Boyfriend, which is my rom-com that I wrote last year. And I love this book because it came out of nowhere. I had just finished writing Tomb of Heaven, and I always, adventure is it's so meticulous, it's so detailed, it's so plotted out, and I always, hear this debate between plotters and pantsers, people who just write off the seat of their pants. I'm going to give that. I think I need to give that a go. I've never done it before. I always plot everything meticulously. I think I'm just going to write a book and just, go for it. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, it kind of has to be a comedy and a romance, one or the other or both, just so that it can be, dialogue heavy. I thought if I'm going to, just write, I can't. it can't have an intricate plot. It must be all dialogue driven and character driven. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to do a rom-com. I'm going to, my partner Brett loves rom-coms. I said to him, what are your favorite rom-coms? I'm going to do a rom-com. Give me some inspiration. And he mentioned Notting Hill. And I thought, oh, that's a good story. The whole, average guy and, insanely famous woman, that's, and will it work? I thought, great, I'm going to do a billionaire book like that, because there's so many billionaire books on the market and they're all so serious. I thought, I'm going to do a billionaire comedy. I'm going to just make it a little bit, relaxed and fun and just see where it goes and put in some crazy, supporting characters, which I love doing. And I finished the book and I adored it. It made me laugh. And if it makes me laugh, hopefully it makes other people laugh. I got Brett to read it, and he cried, and he said, "My God, that is my favorite book ever." And I thought, great, and it did okay when I released it. And then I kind of thought, well, I think there's a sequel there, and so I've literally just yesterday sent off to edit Billionaire's Wedding, which is the second one. Which is more fun and adventure for Billionaire. His name's Calvin Croft, and his boyfriend is Matthew Darcy. And it's written from Matt's point of view. And there's lots of wackiness. It's a comedy. I really want to make it clear to people that I think there are romances out there that have humor in them, but this is a romantic comedy. So first and foremost, it's a comedy, and then the romance is kind of the glue that holds it all together. But yes, there is some silliness, there is some fun, there is nothing I write doesn't have a little bit of over the topness about it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I as I said, I've just finished Billionaire's Wedding, and I was so excited about finishing it. So I didn't want to say goodbye to the characters. That my next book is actually going to be a Christmas Billionaires book called The Christmas Wish, which. Billionaire's Wedding is out in September, and I'm going to aim to release Christmas Wish by the end of October. So watch this space. So that's my rom-com side of me, with funny characters that some people laugh out loud, and some people say, "Oh, that's a little bit much."
Amongst all the genres that you've done, are there ones that you still want to try?
Yeah, definitely. And before we started recording, we were talking about YA. I definitely want to try YA. I haven't done it yet, but it's got everything in it that I love writing about. If you look at my short stories, like And the Beagle Makes Three, or Boy from Brighton, or Be My Valentine, Bobby, what's his name, Bobby Bryson. They're a lot of that is from a kid's point of view, or dealing with the child's emotion. And I think there's, when you grow up gay, especially, I grew up gay in the 70s and 80s, and not knowing for most of it that I was. You live with a secret. You go to school and everyone else is part of this club that you're not part of, and you don't throw it out there. You hide a lot. And I've watched Love, Simon recently, and wow, bang on. So much of that is just so right, so real, and so God. I would have loved seeing that kind of movie when I was a kid at high school. That would be awesome. And I love the success that's had. That says that, wow, there is an audience out there for this, and they've taken a chance on that movie and it's paid off, and that is wonderful. And I do think there's a billion more stories out there like that. There are currently in our industry. And there's so many more to tell, because that's such a pivotal time in your life. It's such a dangerous time when, your emotions can do terrible things to you, and you've got to be so strong. You've got gay kids have to be so tough, and they go through so much, and if you can put a little bit out there, like you guys do, and just to help that little bit, and to share that journey and say it's okay. And I would love to do that. I would love to, write a book like that. I think it would be awesome to do. I think it would be important to do it as well. And I know YA doesn't, go through the roof in terms of sales or anything like that, but that's not to say that those books aren't important and aren't precious and aren't truly valued.
And I will definitely read the Geoffrey Knight YA book. I can't wait to see what you do with that one day.
Oh, thank you. Well, I can't either.
Am I fanboying too much in this interview?
Oh, maybe just a little bit around the edges, but that's okay.
You mentioned that Indiana Jones had changed your life, and the writing kind of started around that time. What really kicked it into gear for you that you wanted to spend a good part of your life telling stories?
That's a good question. I think for writers, it's not a choice. I don't know if there actually comes a time when it's like, wow, this is what I want to do. I actually think you're that kind of kid who just sits in his room and scribbles out stories, and you do it from a young age. And I moved around a lot when I was a kid. I was always that new kid at school. I went to so many schools, it's not funny. And so I didn't have a lot of friends. So I would actually spend a lot of my weekends and home time, I'd create, characters and stories because they were my friends. And so it kind of started there. And then when I was 19, I wrote my first ever novel, which never got published. It was huge. It was long. It was so insanely long. And that's how much time I had on my hands. I was going to uni, and uni, you spend a lot of time at the bar, and then you do other things. You don't go to class. But that's not a message to the kids out there. Stay in school. But I wrote this novel, and and then I went away overseas for a year, and a friend of mine actually entered the novel into a novel competition, which was judged by, I don't know if you guys know who Thomas Keneally is. He's an Australian author. He wrote Schindler's List, and he's an incredible author, and he was the judge of it, and I got shortlisted. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. That's a national book prize, and I've been shortlisted. I didn't win. But I thought, wow, that's in the comments I got back were, keep writing. And I thought, wow, that's cool. Yeah, I will keep writing. And then I didn't. Then I went and started writing screenplays. But the stories kept flowing and flowing and flowing. Again, I've forgotten the question. Oh, was there a time?
No, actually, you hit most of it, because it's like, what really kickstarted you into writing and making that the thing you were going to do for a good chunk of your life.
I think if you're a writer, it's a gift and a curse, and it's never going to go away. It's never. Some days you're waking up and go, I'm not going to write anymore. That's it. And it's like, that's never going to happen. I'll be writing until I can't. And I think all writers are like that. It's like breathing for us, really. It's something we'll always do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, who are your author influences? What do you read that's just like, that right there, that's an inspiration?
When I was a kid, when I was young, it was Stephen King, without a doubt. I don't read fantasy now, but I did when I was a teenager. But I think that's, again, escapism. But I just devoured Stephen King's books, and I think he's phenomenal. I think when he dies, he's going to go down as one of the masters of all time. He already is. And what he does, there's so many people out there who say, oh, I don't want to read a horror novel. He doesn't write horror. There's horror in his stories. He writes stories about real people, real characters. These characters are so well drawn, and he does what Hitchcock did. Hitchcock always said, I will put an ordinary person in an extraordinary situation. And that's exactly what Stephen King does. And he does it to great effect. All of these characters, you look at Pet Sematary, nothing horrific happens in that, nothing horror happens in that book until halfway through. But it's about a family dealing with a tragedy. And that's essentially, he takes those really common themes of the human condition, and then he introduces an element that's going to push the characters into the resolution. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think he's incredible. I really do. As for now, I'm trying to get some culture. and you know, I'm reading Call Me by Your Name, which is very intense, and Giovanni's Room, which is very intense. And I don't mind doing that kind of reading those kind of books, because what they do is they make me want to write the stuff that I like writing. Like if ever I'm tempted to, I'm going to do a really heavy book, I do something that's going to be a masterpiece, I'll read a masterpiece. And it's like, oh, I can't compete with that. So it gets it out of my system. So I tend to do that a lot. But, you know, other authors in our industry, you know, I'm loving N.R. Walker at the moment. You know, the authenticity of her Australian voice for an Australian is wonderful to read. And that's something that I don't do a lot. I don't do at all, apart from my one and only Australian story. This is a plug. My one and only Australian story is The Pearl, but I do tend to put on an American voice when I write, just because that's the biggest audience in the world. But I love that NR writes Australia with a very authentic Australian voice, and she's nailed it, and she's cracked an audience, and you know, I love her to death for it, and best of luck and success. She's amazing.
Cool. Let's jump back in time a little bit to 2012, when you wrote your only nonfiction book, which was called Why Straight Women Love Gay Romance.
Yeah.
Now, the genre has evolved, obviously, in the 5 years since that book. Would you say the findings that you had in that book hold true today, or have they evolved as well?
I think the findings, yes, do hold true today in that book, because the intention of that book, for anybody who hasn't read that book or doesn't know about it, I interviewed 32 women around the world, you know, 4 different continents, something like 8 different countries, because I wanted to know why they read gay romance. And this was at a point where the wave of gay romance was building, you know, and you could see it was going to turn into this metaphorical tsunami that it is today. It's huge today, and you could see it growing very, very quickly back in 2012. And when I first started writing gay fiction, I thought, seriously, in 2007, I thought gay men would be the only target here. And I was very wrong. And I was very happy to be very wrong, because not a lot of gay men read. And yet there's all these women who read. So awesome. You know, this is giving us a huge audience. And what these women were doing was they were educating themselves on gay rights. Their awareness of the gay world came through the fiction that they read. They were going out and joining PFLAG. You know, they were going out and marching for equality and marriage equality at the time, which was, you know, so topical and has been for a decade. And so what I wanted was to find out the personal reasons why these women read gay romance. And interestingly, a lot of the stories are quite different, but they all came to this one point where straight romance left them wanting more, because they couldn't get in the head of the hero, of the guy, who, you know, the heroine fawns over a man. They never got a chance to understand this man. And that really frustrated these women, that they were reading about a woman like themselves being compared to her, you know, sometimes not favorably, because the woman was sometimes gorgeous. And let's face it, everyone's an individual, and we don't all look like. I'm trying to think of a gorgeous woman. Angelina Jolie, is she gorgeous? I don't know. Okay. But so I think findings hold true because it was a very personal journey for all of those women, and they were all amazing women. That, you know, a lot of them are friends of mine, and Suzanne Brockman who, you know, is the star of the moment today. She wrote the foreword for it, and Laura Baumbach from MLR Press, who's been fighting for gay romance to be recognised forever. You know, she spearheaded this whole book, and she got me in touch with Suzanne Brockman, and Chris Jason was amazing in the book as well. But talking to Suzanne, and wow, she's a smart woman, and she's so genuine. She's so real, and she's so funny and clever, and speaks the truth. My God, she can nail it. She's such a good writer, and she's an even better speaker. And she wrote this forward for me that literally brought me to tears. I was like, oh my God, there's nothing stopping this book now. It's happening. And her journey was again different, you know, because her son was gay, and he was going through a tough time at school, and she just wanted to tell everyone that this is not right and this is not fair. She did it much better than I did just then, and with a lot more power. And so I think, yes, the findings do still stand, because it's about a personal journey for all of these people. And the other thing is that made it so personal is that whenever a straight woman picks up a gay romance, if they want to tell other people in their world, their husband or their parents or their siblings or their friends, that they're reading gay romance, that's the equivalent of their coming out. That's because then if they say that to people who don't understand, they say, well, why are you reading that? And then they have to basically come out and give their reasons and hopefully educate other people and build the awareness. So I think that I've gone now. My trail of thought.
Well, I think you wrapped it up.
I think the point you're making is, yes, the book is still valid today as it was in 2012.
Exactly.
That's it. Thanks, Will. Correct.
So, besides the couple of Fathoms books that we hinted at earlier, what else is coming up for you?
Okay, well, next is Billionaire's Wedding, and then the Billionaire's Wish. And then we've got some Fathoms 5 coming up. And I've got I need another series. I've got a new series coming up early next year, which it's something that's, I don't think it's been done as focused as I want to do it in this industry. I really want to plunge people into an industry that I know very, very, very well, which is always a big help when you start writing, because if you know something inside out, it makes it a lot easier to write about it. So there's going to be a new series which will be coming out hopefully in January, which I can't give you the title of yet, because I don't want to give it away. I just want to kind of let Christmas run through and then go, bam, here it is, everybody. But it's going to be very sexy. It's going to have some thrills, and it's all set in New York, and it's all set in one industry. And it's not fashion, because I'm not very fashionable.
I can't wait to see what comes in January now.
That's interesting.
So what's the best way for everybody to keep up with your work?
I am really slack, and I don't have a blog page, and I don't have a website. So, but Facebook. Friend me on Facebook if you're not already a friend. And you can find me. I'm sure you can find somebody who's a friend of mine. Just look me up. Otherwise, and Amazon. I'm trying to get things on there for pre-order, so early these days, so that people know what's coming up. And Billionaire's Wedding is on there already for pre-order, so feel free to jump on and suss that one out. If you like comedy and you haven't read Billionaire's Boyfriend, we live in dark times. It's nice to have a little bit of comedy in your life.
Hear, hear. That's for sure. Well, Geoff, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about Fathoms and the Billionaire's Wedding and all this other good stuff.
Thank you for having me.
As always, it's a complete joy to talk to Geoff.
Yeah, I wish we could do it more often. He needs to come back to the States. Come back to the States, Geoff, please. And we could also say that the Christmas story for the Billionaire series has gone up on pre-order, so you'll find that link in the show notes as well.
Fantastic. Okay, I think that'll do it for this week's episode. Coming up next week in episode 150, woohoo, 150.
Big milestone week time.
In this very important episode, we are going to feature author and filmmaker Brian Sloan, and he's going to talk to us about his latest project, West 40s.
Yes, it was a joy talking to him. I didn't realize how many things between books and films and plays and stuff that we've seen of his over the years that is now, led up to West 40s. That's just debuted a few weeks back.
Yeah, fantastic project. All right, guys, remember, no matter where life takes you, the journey will always be sweeter when you have a book. So until next time, everyone, please keep turning those pages and keep reading.
For detailed show notes and the complete episode backlist, go to biggayfictionpodcast.com. New episodes are available every Monday on all major podcast distributors and YouTube. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.